Hi everyone, this is Nia and today I'm going to be painting an ice cream stand or an ice cream cart. I noticed that the paper on the sketchbook is getting quite sensitive and it was starting to get damaged, so I decided to paint this one with gouache, but of course you can use watercolors if you want to. When I was scrolling through Pinterest, I saw this picture of a food cart and I really loved the whimsical look of it, which is why I decided to pick this subject matter to paint. But just to add on to the whimsical feel, I decided to turn it into an ice cream cart so I can play with the colors and decorations a bit more. I'm going to begin by sketching out the outline. I like to sketch the main large elements that I want to include very lightly first with my pencil, and I'm drawing the lines very light and loosely so I can erase to shift things around without having spent too much time drawing things in detail in any specific area. I knew I wanted to have a giant ice cream cone on the left as decoration as well as a simple cart, so I'm going to sketch that out first. I want the cart to be simple. It's basically just a rectangle with one wheel and an awning for the roof. So once I drew that on, I can add on the details of what I'm going to put in the cart. I like to make things easy for myself, and whenever I need to divide up a certain area with some accuracy, I like to divide it up into sections and making a grid before adding on the details, just like the awning here. If you have any other ideas, you can also change the theme of the cart, but since I want this to be an ice cream cart, on the left I have a frame where I'll be scribbling on the menu, and next to it I'm going to draw out the ice cream containers, which I will also try to divide up evenly with the space that I have. At this point, I'm pretty much happy with the basic layout of the cart and how it fits within the page, so it's fine for me to move on to add on the details of the cart, like the ice cream cones, cups, and also decorations and things like that. Of course, I want to draw pots of flowers around the cart, but you can also decorate it to your taste and imagination. So here I'm just going to keep sketching out the decor, and I'll get back to you once I'm ready to paint. As I mentioned earlier, I'll be using gouache for this painting. I'm going to use the primary colors only, plus black and white. So here are the colors that I'll be using. The first color is Ivory Black. This is primary blue, primary yellow, and I'll also be using Bengal Rose instead of the primary red because this mixed with the yellow will become the primary red. As for the white, I'll be using bleed-proof white because I realized the white that I brought with me was completely dry and I couldn't use it anymore. But of course, if you have white gouache, you can use that. I'm only going to use a little bit of black, and as for the primary colors, I'm going to put a good dollop of paint on my palette in each well. And I'm also going to divide up the primary colors to make secondary color mixes in separate wells. This way it's easier for me to have access to the basic colors without having to worry about contaminating the primary colors, but I'm not going to mix the two colors together so I can still have control over the ratio. I really like the mint or pastel teal color of the card from the reference image, so I'm going to mix blue, yellow, and a lot of white to make it more pastel-y. At this point, I wasn't sure how dark I wanted the color to be, and it's been a while since I used gouache, so I wasn't sure how dark it was going to dry. So this is the color that I began with. I didn't mind too much because I know I can always layer on more paint to fix the colors anyway. So I use this color to paint the basic structure of the card while playing with the tint, and that just basically means how much white I decide to mix with the hue. Since I want the wheel to be the same color, I decided to separate the shapes by mixing a bit of black in the teal or mint mixture to paint underneath the wheel, and this will serve as the shadow color. For the rest of the card, I also want to add a light brown to cream color, so I use all the primary colors with mostly yellow and pink to make an orange with a bit of black to mute the color slightly. Then, just like the mint, I like to add different amounts of white depending on how light or dark I want the color for specific areas. As accent, I also want to add a bit of this color for the wheel as well. I'm going to use the mint color for the awning again, and since I want the top portion to be lighter, I used a lot of white for this section, and I tried to add more of just the mint color without the white, so the front facing part of the awning is a little bit darker. Since I want the awning to be two-toned, which is just the mint and white, I alternate the color in between, but you can also use other hues as well if, say, you want it to be mint and pink or mint and the cream color. Since the front-facing area is going to be a bit darker, I used a little bit of black with white to make a gray mixture. And I'm just going to paint this on the front facing part of the awning on the white areas. And as for the top, I don't want it to be completely white, so I use the same color in a thin consistency, so I just added a lot of water into it. As I was painting this, I realized that I wanted to show some part of the back of the awning as well, so it has more of a three-dimensional look. And for this, because this part would be darker than what we just painted, I just added black to the mint color as I did with the card. And I'm also going to add black to the gray mixture so it's a bit darker. For the pole or the stand, I want to add a darker color just so it looks like the top part is a bit in shadow. So I just add some of the dark gray mixture and I mixed it with the cream color. For the brown here, I used an orange mix with a lot of Bengal Rose and black, which is why it's quite dark and I didn't really add any white. But then I changed my mind thinking that it'll look cuter if it's lighter, but then I think I adjusted the color as I paint this, so in terms of the tone, you can always keep layering on more colors and just see what tone you prefer for your painting. As I got to the details, I changed my brush into a smaller synthetic brush. You can use any small brush that you have, but synthetic I think is the way to go with gouache because it's stiffer. As for the color of the cone, I basically used the same cream color as I used for the stand, but I used less white for the darker parts to separate the cone slightly. For the cups, I decided to use the mint color with added gray so it's not as bright as the actual card itself. By the way, I'm really sorry if the light keeps changing. It was a really cloudy day when I filmed this, and the sun just wanted to hide behind the clouds sometime, so it was actually quite hard to edit the color. Hopefully it's not too distracting though. But anyway, getting back to the painting, I want to paint the ice cream using pink. So I used Bengal Rose with a little bit of yellow so it's not too overly bright hot pink, and I also added white to turn it into a pastel pink. Personally, I find that pink is such a fun and cute color for food, especially ice cream and donuts for some reason, which is why I've chosen this for the ice cream. But of course, you can also turn this into a chocolate ice cream, vanilla, or even raspberry or blueberry swirl if that's what you want to include in your painting. I just want mine to be simple, just pink with colorful sprinkles, which is what I'm going to add later on. As for the color of the cone, I basically just use the same color as I use for the smaller cones at the back. And of course, I use less white for the darker areas underneath the scoop of ice cream. For the waffle texture on the cone, I basically just drew on squares going diagonally using the same color but without the white. This is much simpler to paint on with a flat brush, but unfortunately I didn't have one with me. And because this is gouache, you can actually do this the other way around, which is to paint on the dark brown as the base color and paint diagonal lines instead of squares using a light brown color to create the checkered waffle texture. But I just find that painting this way makes the painting look more organic since each square is a little bit different. But I understand that it's kind of tedious to do, so it's completely up to you which technique you want to approach this. Here I'm just painting on the base color of the sprinkles. These are the colors that I've chosen for mine, but of course you can adjust this to however you like. And I'm going to leave that to dry. Meanwhile, I'm going to add the darker pink for the texture of the ice cream itself. So I use the same mixture but with less white, as you can see, so the pink is a bit darker. After that, here I'm using the same dark pink mix with a little bit of black, so it's a bit muted, and I'm painting underneath each of the sprinkles that I've painted on earlier, and this will just make the sprinkle pop out a little bit more. Painting the ice cream is so much fun. You get to pick out the flavors that you like. Here I just have the basic flavors like chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, and I also create a minty green for mint choc chip, which is my personal favorite. And I use the exact same color to paint on small scoops on the menu as well. For the poles or the stand of the ice cream cart, I decided to decorate it with some greeneries. So I used a mixture of the blue, yellow, and a little bit of the red just to mute the color slightly, and also a little bit of black if I want the green to be darker. And I just alternate between the light green and the dark green just to paint on the leaves going around as a vine for each of the ice cream poles. For the flowers in the pots, I decided to use pinks and peaches to complement the teal or mint green of the ice cream cart. So I mostly use a mix of white with Bengal Rose and yellow, and if I want the color to be muted slightly, I would add the tiniest bit of blue or just the tiniest bit of black. I also played around with the ratio of the white to get different tints of the hues that I've chosen. If you want, you can also add different types of flowers with different colors to decorate your cart, but I personally wanted to keep this decoration cohesive all throughout the composition, so the color mixing isn't too confusing as well if you guys want to paint along to this one. To paint the flowers, I like to rotate my brush around while dotting it at the same time to create clumps, and I like to alternate the colors. Once I have a few clumps of flowers, then I like to fill in the rest of the area using a light yellow-green color that is slightly muted with a little bit of Bengal Rose. And then I follow this up using a slightly darker green. So I use more blue and Bengal Rose with a little bit of black in the mixture. And I add some textured leaves. I especially like to paint loose leaves around the outer portion of the flowers, so it looks looser and less bulky. To make the flowers look a bit more textured and have volume, I like to add a slightly darker pink, and I like to place it on the outer portion so it looks more three-dimensional. I use the terracotta color for the pots, and that's basically by using all the mixtures, but mostly brown, by using yellow and Bengal Rose as the base color, and then I used the blue as well as black to adjust the saturation or the desaturation of color. As for the shadows, I added more black in the mix and I painted underneath the plants as some cast shadows on the pots. If the pinks that I've painted look a little bit too dark after adding the shadows, I like to also go back in with a slightly lighter color of the pink, or sometimes I just use a light consistency of bleed-proof white to dot a small portion on top of the flowers. At this point, I've pretty much finished coloring all the elements, but this is where the adjustment comes in. I felt like overall the painting looks fairly dull or too light and pastel-y. If that's what you like though, you can leave it here, but I felt like I'm going to deepen the colors slightly. So I'm just going to go over some of the colors that I've already painted so I can increase the saturation and also the value of certain areas. I feel like the card has better colors now with a bit more distinction for each shape, and I also want to add slightly darker accents for the overall composition. So next here I'm just going to add darker greens for the plants to make it a bit more bushy and textured. After that, I'm going to outline the painting using my Sakura Micron pen in sepia. For some reason, the ink wouldn't come out in certain areas. I'm not too sure why, but if you know why, you can hopefully educate me a little bit on this. I felt like areas where the gouache paint was a bit more thick, it was hard for the ink to come out, or maybe it wasn't dry enough. I felt like everything was completely dry already, but yeah, hopefully if you guys have some insights on this, you can help me a little since I'm fairly new with gouache. I would also prefer if the sepia is a little bit lighter, maybe more like a red-brown or something less harsh for this painting. Since the theme is mostly pastel, I felt like the sepia is just too strong in comparison to the rest of the colors. But since this is the only art liner that I have, then I just stuck to it to the end. Another option is also to outline it using just the gouache that I mix myself, or ink, but I felt like it was a bit too tedious since I already spent 3 hours on this. But the option is there if you have the same feeling as I do towards the harshness of the outline. To finish off the outline, I just add a bit of text that I wrote with pencil first. I just wrote ice cream just to incorporate a little bit of typography in the composition, and you can basically finish it off here, but I felt like the painting looks kind of floaty without cast shadows, so I'm just going to add it on very lightly using a little bit of blue-gray. At the very end, for some reason, I wanted to balance the color further with the harsh outline, so I decided to darken some of the colors for the cart, and I also added a darker pink for the ice cream. Looking back at it again though, I don't mind the ice cream, but I think I prefer a lighter mint color for the cart. It was just a bit difficult for me to figure out the balance when I wasn't so happy with the color of the outline. But anyway, hopefully you can figure yours out and adjust the painting to your liking. But anyway, I'm just going to finish off everything here. Despite the mistakes, I actually still enjoyed painting this one since I really love the theme and the subject matter of this painting. And the reason why I decided to use only primary colors for this painting is because a lot of you have asked me how I learned about color mixing, and I always tell you guys to start with really basic colors, which are the primary colors, so you know how these colors will affect each other. I also come to realize that I never actually painted anything using primary colors on my YouTube, so hopefully this can serve as a little bit of practice for some of you guys who might be struggling with this. But yeah, that's basically it for this painting. Like usual, all the list of tools will be in my description box along with my social media links and the coffee shop link to the outline of this painting. If you're still here, thank you so much for watching till the end, and I'll see you at the next one. Bye!